Michael Barone of the Washington Examiner, Fox News Channel contributor, joins us on the program. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you? Good to be with you.
It's great to talk to you again. So, President Obama wants us to talk about Obamacare on Thanksgiving. Michael Bloomberg wants us to talk about gun control on Thanksgiving. I suppose if this comes up, we could talk about your article that came out today at the Washington Examiner, why opposition to gun control has increased.
Yeah, I think
over the last half century.
Talking about controversial subjects at Thanksgiving, my father was a physician for 54 years, and if you brought up the word malpractice at Thanksgiving, we would hear a tirade about crooked lawyers and things like that. So you were well advised not to bring up that particular word.
There are some things that, the purpose of Thanksgiving dinner is to get together with family and have a good time, last time I checked.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Now, you say that economist Brian Kaplan notes that support for gun control, specifically the ban on handguns or pistols, has decreased dramatically since the 1950s and 60s. It is hard to imagine today, but when Gallup started polling this question back in 1959, 60% of Americans said that they supported banning handguns. That's down to about 25%.
Yeah, they used
today.
the language pistols and revolvers at that time rather than handguns. So just to specify that difference.
So why do you think, Michael, we have seen this opposition?
Well,
to
I think
gun
there's
control?
two basic trends. Number one, violent crime roughly tripled between 1965 and 75. If you go back and look at America in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, we had much lower crime rates than we had today, and much, much, much lower than in the period between 1965 and 95. And so, I think it was obvious that people started thinking when you have a lot of violent crime, maybe people might need to have a handgun.
Yeah, you say that it was then that majorities came to oppose handgun bans while violent crime was increasing. This is also the same time period, Michael, where you had the rise of the gun control movement. You had the Gun Control Act of 1968. By 1976, the state of Massachusetts had a referendum to ban handguns on the ballot that went down to defeat. Washington, D.C. passed its handgun ban. Chicago,
78, yeah.
Right. Chicago waited until the early 80s, but, the Handgun Control Incorporated was around.
There is no violent crime in Chicago anymore, as you know.
Absolutely. It's completely been wiped out by the ferries, I believe, there in California, in Chicago. So this was not only a time in which Americans started rejecting the idea of the gun ban, but it was also the same time period where a group of Americans became adamantly convinced that the answer was, in fact, to ban guns.
Yeah, basically you have the elites, liberal elites, but including some people that you might classify as conservative, extrapolating from those earlier poll results and said, oh, we've got higher crime. Let's get rid of handguns. And you have law-abiding citizens, voters, saying, that's not a good idea. And we've had that gulf and divide between certain of our elites and the large majority of our citizens ever since.
You also point out the other aspect of this is the successive right to carry laws, starting with Florida back in 1987. And you say that many, including yourself, predicted that this would lead to, quote, gunfights on the street and over traffic altercations. Did you really?
Yeah, I did. I'm a person who's not very good handling small machines, so I didn't have a gun at that time and never thought about becoming a gun owner. I've shot guns occasionally at shooting ranges, but very little. And I thought, people will, they'll have arguments over traffic altercations. You'll get some road rage. People will start shooting each other in the street. That's a danger that I worried about. Well, we've had a quarter century of experience since that Florida law was passed, and we've got more than 40 states with variations on carrying concealed handgun laws, allowing law-abiding citizens who can demonstrate that they competent to handle guns to get a license to carry a concealed weapon. And we simply haven't had those kind of street fights. We've got a press that, by and large, is staffed by people who were against gun control. They'd be happy to run stories if they could find any of that kind of thing happening, but they're very, very rare. And when you think about it, There's another potentially deadly weapon that vast numbers of ordinary citizens, the large majority of our population, deploy every day, and that's called the automobile. If you wanted to go kill people with your automobile, you could do it any day of the week. Just drive up on the sidewalk and mow people down. It happens almost never. I mean, we had an incident at the University of North Carolina about 8 or 10 years ago where some Muslim students, drove a car into a pedestrian plaza. Fortunately, nobody died. Some people were injured. But that was national news. That sort of thing simply doesn't happen very much, and it turns out that responsible citizens tend to behave responsibly.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Michael, great talking to you as always, sir, and I hope that you have a very happy Thanksgiving.
Well, good Thanksgiving to you, sir.
Are there any topics that are off limits at your Thanksgiving table?
I'm just not going to. I'm not even going to answer that question.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. We'll talk again soon.
Take care.
Michael Barone joining us of the Washington Examiner.